Welcome to the Wellness Esquire podcast. I'm Ariella, and I'm very excited for you to hear this conversation with Patrick Patino. Patrick is a bankruptcy attorney, and you may know of him as the Newfangled Lawyer from his podcast. Patrick has spent many years thinking about and speaking with other lawyers about how to build a practice that feels good, that feels authentic, and that suits you for the phase of life that you are in. We talk about designing your career and your life really, truly for you. And we talk about how important it is for lawyers to be happy. Thank you so much for being here. Let's get into it. Tell me why you went to law school in the first place.
Oh, it's for a really great reason. So I graduated undergrad in 2009 with a degree in poetry, creative writing, and it was during the financial poetry. So
I didn't see that. I guess maybe I could have seen that coming.
Yeah. And so it's like, what do you do with a poetry degree during a financial crisis? And so at the time, I was delivering furniture with my cousins for a local furniture store. And I was at the pool with my parents. And my mom mentioned some guy was like building a new house. I was like, oh, what does he do for a living? And mom was like, oh, he's a lawyer. And I was like, I think I could be a lawyer. I was like, what is a lawyer? What do you got to do? I like reading, writing, and helping people. And this is to the extent I thought what lawyers did. They like read a lot, they write a lot, and they help people. And so I studied for the LSAT by reading a different novel every day. And then, because all it is reading. So I just read a ton. And then
I've never heard that before.
Yep. I didn't take a class. I just read books. And then on Saturdays, I would take back-to-back practice LSATs. I did that for, I think, about 2.5 months. Took the LSAT the day of, like, taking one LSAT was then easy. It was, like, done, because I was anticipating then, right, I had done all the practice of doing a second LSAT.
You had the stamina.
Yeah, and so, I mean, this is kind of defined unintentionally my whole career, is that how I go about getting to that end goal is not really how anyone else does it. So it's like I went to law school being like, I'm going to transfer law schools, which no one does this. They tell you not to do this. So I went to John Marshall, which is now UIC in Chicago. I then transferred to University of Illinois. And one of my transfer buddies was like, hey, we should take a 4-hour bankruptcy class. And I was like, that sounds miserable. I almost failed finance in college, which is why I switched my major to creative writing, but fine. Sure. And so I took the class, and my professor, Pam Foey, was awesome. Her bankruptcy professor was Elizabeth Warren at Harvard. And we used Elizabeth Warren's book on bankruptcy, and it was taught like no other law school class I had. And it was like small group format where you went through like practical like scenarios and then applied the bankruptcy code, where everything else up until that point was like big lecture, or it was like these really abstract concepts that like really don't impact everyday people. Like they do and they don't. So this felt like real. This was like, okay, I can see how the law actually impacts someone's life and is a solution. I tallied the class, and it was like, it kind of chose me. What I tell people is, in the practice of law, if you can find something that you're good at that brings you joy, like the bankruptcy code is like this alien world that a lot of lawyers, you mentioned bankruptcy, are like, I want nothing to do with that. Like, and so this was like my place. So I just like didn't fight it. Like I didn't try to change myself. I didn't chase anything else. I was like brilliantly naive. I had no idea what like OCIs were. I had no idea like the game you have to play. There was no competition for me. Like how I did law school is like when I would take an exam, I would handwrite it. When I was done, I wouldn't review it. I'd just go turn it in. And so it's like, this is how I just went about practicing law, is just, I'm going to show up, do my thing, and try not to spend more time doing it than I need to.
So even at that early stage, you had a mindset of, I'm going to do this, but not more than I have to.
That's right.
Like, I'm going to have guardrails around this.
That's right. I didn't study on the weekend at all. Not one time in law school did I study on the weekend. When I sat for the bar exam, I didn't study on the weekends. I actually took 2 weeks off before the bar exam. I got married while prepping for the bar, and then I handwrote the bar in pencil. So yeah, I just always accepted, like, even it, like, by my second, third year, I stopped bringing a laptop to class, and I would just listen. I wouldn't take notes or anything. I would just literally listen and interact with the professor and the other people around me. So I just figured out that, like, there's not a way of doing this early on. Like, even in law school, I had like a beard and long hair, and I like didn't care in the best way. Like, I can still remember, like, I did like those mock trials, and one of the judges was like, "Well, you'd be really fun to get a beer with," which is not a compliment, really. I don't think she meant it as a compliment, because I'm pretty informal, although I know big words, and I can be very articulate and use words like predilection. But it's like day in and day out, even then, I just wanted to be myself. And the pressures of practicing law, like, you change. It tries to change you, and you have to allow it to happen to some extent, right? Like, I tell people, like, you can't show up to court in a jumpsuit, like in Air Force Ones, as a lawyer. Like, maybe someday when millennials are on the bench,
I
like,
haven't tried it. We don't know for sure.
we don't. I mean, there's rules of, like, decorum and stuff, but yeah, even early on, I just, like, right, I had an opportunity. I could have clerked for a bankruptcy judge. I turned it down because I just wanted to do my own thing. I didn't want to do someone else's thing.
How much, like, was this just like an enormous sense of self at that point? Like, did you understand what your values were, what you wanted your life to look like? Did you act, like, intentionally have boundaries, or were you just like, or like, what was letting you
do this?
do this?
I think this was without knowing it, without being aware of it, it was the early stages of a lot of self-work and self-discovery and seeking clarity. My whole life, yeah, I just kind of did things my own way. Sometimes this worked, like in school, like if I had a English teacher who had a rubric, I would usually, like, completely kind of come up with a creative way to still comply with the rubric. I had some people that appreciated this, saw the value of it, encouraged me to do it. And then I'd have other times where it'd be like, no, you have to check these 10 boxes. What are you doing? And so I think just innately, I kind of always was this introverted creative type that lived inside my own head, which has a lot of benefits. In the legal profession, we celebrate the outspoken, the extrovert, the planner. I've never been a planner. I would say, like, in terms of being like an achiever, it was kind of always on my own terms. Like, I just didn't care, like, in the way other people cared. So, like, even my younger sister and I went to the same high school. When I was a senior, she was a freshman. By the time she had some of the same teachers I did, they would tell my parents, like, they're two different, like, how do they come from the same family? Like, Patrick never seemed to care what grade he got on a test.
Was any
or
amount
anything
of
like that
about having perspective on what was actually important? Or
like
did
what
you just, because, like,
Yeah.
I'm wondering how much of this, if you can relate at all to what I experienced, which was, I mean, for example, when I was in law school, I was really sick. And while my classmates were freaking out about, studying for everything, and I was, very type A and pretty high strung, but I remember around finals, I figured out that it was better for me to study around the 2Ls and the 3Ls because they'd already been through it and they had perspective on what the process was and what this really meant. And the 1Ls were going through such a panic. And I was like, I'm just trying to not die every day. And so, like, my focus was elsewhere. I also wanted to do well. but
Mm-hmm.
there was only so much space that I had to think about what was important. So I'm wondering, like, for you, was any amount of this just an understanding of like, yes, I want to do this, but like, the difference between this rating or this grade or whatever, like, isn't that big of a deal? Was any of this perspective, or were you just like, yep, I'm my own person, I don't care about that, I'll see what
I
happens?
would reach. I had a thing. I was like, I know enough. So like even with studying, I would just stop. I'd be like, I know everything I'm gonna know. Done. I don't. And I'm not sure.
By that.
I yeah. I'm not. I don't know. Like what drove me to do this. I just saw like at a certain point, like the diminishing return or the lack of utility. Like I still wanted to be able to have a life outside of studying for contracts or property law or I just I wanted to hang out with my friends or I wanted to go see a movie or I wanted to go for a run or go to the gym or write or
Good for you.
just sit. So I just didn't. I think even growing up, like there wasn't a big emphasis in my house of like grades or like what you achieved. It was more about being like well rounded and trying different experiences and being creative and being your own person. And those things have served me really well. Like I don't even have a core memory of like my parents even looking at a report card. It was great. Or like when I went to college, like no one was like, "Hey, you must do this thing." Even when I went to law school, like no one was like tried to convince me not to do it. No one was like other than just like, yeah, Patrick just goes and does it, figures it out, I guess.
All right, so you go through law school seemingly different from the way that a lot
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
us do it.
And I thought I enjoyed law school.
I did too. I
Yeah.
just did it with some more stress.
Yeah.
Okay, so you get through law school. What does that early part of your career then look like?
I worked with my father-in-law for the first half of my career. So for the first 6 years, so I joined his practice right out of law school. He
And what
was
did you think about you getting married in the weeks before the bar exam?
that's he didn't nothing. It wasn't his type to. It's not his personality to
Yeah,
comment and
no,
stuff like that.
it's fantastic, and I'm sure
Yeah.
there are other people who do it. I'm just so intrigued because of being wired very, very differently, and I'm amazed and frankly delighted that there are people like you out there who are just like, well, I have a life. It took me so long to figure out the whole living part, and
Yeah.
I'm
It,
impressed.
well, it's
Impressed and
don't be
intrigued.
don't yeah. Well, it's not linear. It's so right. Like I specialize in bankruptcy. It just so turned out that my father-in-law, future father-in-law, was a bankruptcy attorney in Omaha, Nebraska. Total coincidence. This is like, and there's not a lot of people that are like, I'm a bankruptcy attorney. This just does, it's not very common. I didn't know this at the time. I also knew I wanted to work at a solo, like a small firm. I didn't want to work at a big firm. And so, actually, in between my 2L and 3L year, I helped him with a big project and it went really well. And so then he was like, well, you can come here and join my practice. I don't think he knew what he was saying yes to. And so, like early on, right, like I had the benefit of stepping into a law firm that had been around a long time. My father-in-law had been practicing over 30 years, and he was also had systems in place, but was open to change. And maybe because I pushed him to change, but I had the opportunity to kind of like early on start incubating some of the like innovations that at the time were really innovative, like going paperless. And this was in 2014. I was like, we should stop printing all the bankruptcy schedules. We should like in mailing it to clients with a return envelope. Like we need a different process. We were using Amicus. We then switched to Clio. We made a lot of changes. And so early on, the other benefit is at that point in his career, he had kind of slowed down. So there'd be like Fridays. He'd be like, oh, it's it's like 1:00. Like, we should probably be done. We have no appointments. Like, we can be done. This is really unique. I used to like tell my wife, I'm like, I get the benefit of basically like being semi-retired, like straight out the gate. Like, there wasn't this expectation that I work all the time. Although I was working more than probably I thought, because it was all happening inside my head. So even if I wasn't sitting down physically working at a computer or on my smartphone or whatever, like, I was thinking through how to solve problems all the time. And this is kind of a theme that will carry on for years and years. Although I didn't appear to be working, and I convinced myself I wasn't, I was working all the time. I was working when I was on a walk with my kid. I was working when I first woke up in the morning, lying in bed. I was always working because my mind never turned off. So yeah, I mean, working with him was great. We then joined another law firm after about 2.5 years together to allow him to retire. So then we did that for like 3.5 years. He's retired. And then the pandemic, then I was like, I'm going to go solo. Then the pandemic hit. And so the first part of my career was like a lot of kind of like incubating, iterating in a very safe space, but at the same time being very traditional, right? Like, I started conforming to what a lawyer looks like, how you behave, what you do day in and day out. You go to happy hour, you go to bar events, you're constantly doing. And that had a lot of dire consequences for my health. That wasn't without consequences, right? I was having panic attacks. I went to the ER several times, thinking I was having a heart attack. They're just really bad panic attacks. I started just getting sick all the time. I was not taking care of myself. Like, the first half of my career, like, I just set myself aside because I turned off the best parts of kind of who I was, which was chill and having boundaries and being like, oh, like, that's enough, or this doesn't matter. Like, in the grand scheme of life, like, it doesn't matter. I'm going to do a good job, but I can't own like my client's own mistakes. And it was kind of that idea, like, I was working harder than my clients in a lot of ways. And I sacrificed myself for the first 6 years. And so when I went out on my own, I was like, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to have very clear boundaries. I'm going to be really hardcore over what I say yes to and what I say no to. And that didn't happen. I went solo during the pandemic, and bankruptcies fell off precipitously. My practice area basically evaporated overnight. And so, right, you make sacrifices. And when you're self-employed, it's a blessing and a curse. Like, when you're a solo lawyer, the greatest thing is you get to make your own law firm. The worst thing is you get to make your own law firm. Iterating in that way, I still was unwell. I had like mystery illnesses. I go to the doctor, they're like, you're healthy as a horse. I'm like, I don't feel fine. So I went through like literally everything. I had like every blood work done under the sun. And they're like, you're fine. There's nothing wrong with you. I went to the neurologist and had like a full scan of my brain, my spinal cord, everything. The neurologist is like, you're probably just more aware of the sensations in your body, right? And I was like, no. So right around this time, I was just like, I need to make some radical changes. This is 2021. I just moved to Minnesota, and I was like, what? I need to change radically. So I stopped drinking. I stopped using a smartphone. I started like being aware of my own life and feeling stuff. I started seeing a therapist. I started reading books. I started making art. I started like hanging out with my kids and gardening and hanging out with my wife and exercising and like going out in nature and like living. And it was like absolutely scariest thing. But the person I saw looking back at me, we joke I got a driver's license right when I moved here to Minnesota, and my picture doesn't look like me. It looks like a complete stranger. It looks like someone totally dissatisfied with life. I didn't recognize myself. And so that started kind of the peeling back. One of my favorite lines from a book, the concept is kind of like you start digging, looking for the light. And then when you crawl the hole, you realize you were the light all along. And so through this process of self-discovery and introspection and meditation and reading a lot of Thich Nhat Hanh and just sitting, just being present, existing is really difficult, I think. I realized I was an achiever. And that was okay. I was a very intense person. In an effort to kind of turn off all my very constantly thinking brain, I just turned it all off. And so I turned it all back on. Oh boy. So it was just like, I realized at that time, like, I just want to be myself. I really started thinking a lot at that time of kind of this concept of what now is like legal design theory, designing your practice around the life you want to live. And so first I had to get clear, like, what kind of life did I want to live? So I started experimenting. What does this look like? So I started working a 4-day work week. I signed up for a wheel pottery class on a Tuesday that was multi-week. On a Tuesday during the day. And it was like me and a bunch of retirees. Right, and like I said, like, this isn't linear. It's very much so when someone says even they're in like recovery, right? You have really good days, really good weeks, really bad days, really bad weeks. And that's how it's been. Like, some days I feel like, yeah, wow, I'm myself. I'm doing exactly what I want to do. Talking with people, I'm having conversation. I'm building a new narrative around the legal profession. And then other days I'm like, oh, I don't have it today. I don't care about this person's problem. Gosh, I have my own problems. but it's the work, right? Like, I've done so much work the last 5 years redefining like how I want to spend my energy. It's not my time. It's really my energy. Like, what I want to commit it to. So I started making some intentional decisions around my practice. So like, one of them is I was no longer going to do any emergencies. And people are like, well, you do bankruptcy. Everything is an emergency. I'm like, oh, no. Like, I used to be like, someone would be like, hey, my house is going to be foreclosed tomorrow. I'd be like, I'd drop everything. I'm going to help this person. And finally, I was just like, no. So I just created like a list of non-negotiables. That was one of them. Another one was, if you don't know how to use technology, you're not the client for me, and I'm not your attorney. Some people are like, well, gosh, that's not really access to justice of you. And I'm like, believe it or not, like, some people I'd be like, well, in order to work with me, like, this is the competency you need. Like, there's other lawyers who you can go into their office, drop off paperwork. I can get you there. But if you want to work with me, like, one lady, I was like, she had no internet, no technology at all. Yeah. So I was like, go buy an iPad, get it with cell service. And she's probably in her 70s, figured it out. We did it. She was like, so it was about, I figured out, like, it's about empowering people and yourself as an attorney, as opposed to just being like, I'll work with anything, I'll make anything work. That's just creates struggle.
Respectful to yourself.
Yeah, and this is what I think people mean when they say client-centered, is really they mean we basically ignore the fact that lawyers are people, legal professionals are people, will do anything for the client. And on this journey, I was like, I'm done doing that. Because then I'm dissatisfied. And I'm not showing up in my life for myself in the best way, or for my family, for the people around me. I'm just gruntled then all the time. Why not just work with people that want to work with you and are aligned, and you set clear expectations. So I just had a lot of clear expectations. I even now in my signature block, I say, like, if you email me, I might not email you back today. Like, if you email me on the weekend, I'm not going to email you back on the weekend. If it's after hours, I'm not going to email you probably to the next day. And what I've discovered is, like, it allowed my nervous system to reset. Like, it didn't feel like I always had to be on or thinking or present. And it gave permission to clients to sometimes turn it off. Like, they're human too. And so it's just like game, respect, game. Like, it creates trust to be like, hey, I know you're going to have bad days. I'm going to have bad days. Or I might not always be the most immediate. That's not what it means to be a good attorney, or be responsive.
It is not.
So,
and it is wild that there are still attorneys who play that game of, like, in order to do this job, you have to respond ASAP.
yeah,
Simply not.
Or it's this idea that we're like in a profession that requires 100% self-sacrifice. And so I really just started playing with, like, there is no emergency. And there might be urgency, but even then, I started telling clients, like, that's a 30-day from now problem. Like, there's no benefit. Like, we first have to see how the next 30 days plays out. I could spend all this energy going through 15 hypotheticals. Or we could wait 30 days. Then we actually know, with that time passing, there's going to be, like, probably one or two options. And this probably came with confidence. This probably came with just experience. But largely it came to, like, this is what I wanted my day in and day out to look like. And that vacillated over the last 6 years because I was trying to figure it out. I was trying to figure out both how to practice law, play by the game, and also be myself. And this is where the Newfangled Lawyer was born. Was almost like a hub, a way for me to, like, split test. And so the Newfangled Lawyer was born out of my desire to create a different narrative. And really what it ended up getting me was the fact that you can show up professionally in your own way. And that's what resonates. And so I did it. I, like, took then that, everything I'd built there, kind of the vibe, the branding, me, and was going to plug it into my law practice. I'd been flirting with this, but, like, actually bring it to see if, when I was practicing law as myself, as the Newfangled Lawyer, did it bring me more wellness, more satisfaction, more capacity, more breathing space, more time to just walk in my yard barefoot and drink coffee. Because I had iterated. I was searching, right? I was searching for a way to practice law that didn't kill me. I didn't want to die. And this might sound extreme, but you talk to lawyers, there is at least some prevailing narrative where it's like, yeah, I'll probably die by a heart attack by the time I'm 50.
Did you feel like if you didn't change things?
Oh, yeah. Because I'm intense. I bring it. Even though I might not work on the weekends. So, like, figure in a 4 or 5 day work week, I was bringing it.
Well, you're making an interesting point, because I think a lot of us can create these kind of narratives around, like, I've created this, I have this structure, I have these boundaries, and I'm not doing it that way. That was bad, but I'm doing it this way, but I haven't changed sort of the underlying part of me that's actually been what's struggling. I've just reshaped the challenge.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. And part of it has to do with the culture around practicing law, right? Like, you're still interacting with other attorneys, courts, the expectations of clients, right? And everything got accelerated. Figure the last 6 years, everything now is accelerated. People just, their expectations have shifted. And so, yeah, it's like I brought them back to my practice, like, hey, I'm going to practice law as me. And it crushed. People were like, hey, I hired you because you're wearing a backwards hat and a hoodie. What? I hired you because you had pink on your website. I hired you because you just look like a normal dude. And it really, I mean, I was the busiest I'd ever been. And yet, and most successful. I was making the most money. I was doing other things, right? I did the biggest case of my career. I did a $100 million debt case where in the deal too was lawyers from Kirkland Ellis. So it's like right, like as a small lawyer had achieved, I'd done all the things. I'd filed every type of bankruptcy basically you can file. I'd done all the things. And yet, and I'd made all these changes, right? All these changes in life. And yet I still felt incomplete, burned out, dissatisfied, even though I created my own environment and was the decision maker. Ultimately, I had partners and I went back off my own, even went back off on my own, and transformation is hard. Change is difficult. And sometimes you can reach a point and you can fool yourself that there's still more to be done, as opposed to just accepting like, I've done enough. I am enough. I've achieved maybe everything I want to achieve here. That doesn't mean I hate my clients. That doesn't mean like I wasn't good at the work. I just no longer didn't light me up. I didn't wake up in the morning like, oh gosh, I am really looking forward to this. But when I was doing, let's say, Newfangled work or the podcast or speaking, presenting, talking to law students about kind of these concepts of creating a career around you, what you enjoy, what you're good at, man, those are the best days. I left those situations. I was like, how do I create more opportunities for this? So, I mean, over the last several months, I really have slowed down. I was seeking other opportunities because it's not that I was like disgruntled. I wasn't even jaded. I wasn't like the legal profession's horrible. I didn't reach those conclusions. What I reached was this worked for me for a long time, even if it wasn't always in the most balanced way. For a long time, right? Like it afforded me the opportunity to live the life I lived, have the house I have the lifestyle I have. And it was time to be done. So I just stopped taking clients. I said no. I referred people were like, hey, bankruptcy. I was like, I'm not doing that anymore. I turned off my Google listing. I removed it all from my website. These are things that seem super counterintuitive from any kind of like rational, reasonable standpoint. But
why do you say that?
Because I think there's a normative standard of if you build something that's successful, particularly in the legal profession, you figure out how to 10x it. And I wasn't interested in that. I wasn't interested in growing something. Basically, took something that fed me, my family. It was like I could continue to do this, but it's not like feeding my soul or my life or my relationships. I gave so much to my legal practice. I just don't. That cost wasn't worth it for me anymore. At one time, maybe it was, or I convinced myself it was, but so like now it's like letting go. Sometimes, like my wife, she's like, "We'll leap, the net will form," and it does. It always does. You might not even see it. You might not know what form the net's going to take, but you have to trust yourself. So it's like even when I started on this path, 5-ish years ago, I can still remember I was going to present in front of lawyers, and usually I'd wear like business casual, and I was like, to my wife, I was like, I think I'm going to wear like a backwards hat and like Birkenstocks and joggers. And she was like, do it. And I did it. And nothing bad happened. And
tell me more about that. What was the environment? Where did you go? What was the event or the program?
It was an event for solo small lawyers. I had been invited to give a talk that I'd started giving about like choosing the life you want to live, kind of like practicing law is like a choose your own adventure. And I'm saying things like, right, like that are like there are no client emergencies. We're not 911. Don't respond to client emails at 11 p.m. People were. This is like controversial stuff 5-6 years ago. Still, there's less that way, but back.
Not seeing the debates on LinkedIn about to wear a suit or to not wear a suit, and can you even think if you're not wearing?
That's right. And so, like, really
happening?
Yeah, like what? Like my brain's still the same. Actually, I might think better.
I do better when I'm not wearing stuffy clothes that don't feel good.
Same. And so, yeah, it's like how to just keep making the next brave choice. And listening to your intuition, what feels right. Because, and going back to the concept of ahimsa, do no harm, remove harm, is a tenet that we live by in my family. So it's like, I'm not doing any harm by showing up as myself. It might make someone uncomfortable, but I'm not trying to cause harm to anyone or even the system. And so this is why, like, I don't commit energy to saying things like, oh, big law is bad, the billable hours is bad, wearing a suit is bad, this is bad, this is why we have a mental health, the billable hours is why we have a mental health problem. It's like, it's all
this package.
Yeah, a lot of it's just a mindset in your relationship to the environment that you're in and the expectations. And so it's like some people thrive in the expectation of a billable hour requirement in big law. Like that aligns with their expectation. That's what they work for. That, and the costs are worth it to them. And maybe at some point they aren't, and you have to reevaluate. But this is where I think we could just do so much better service to the profession of stop saying like, you should do this. It's like people are like, well, Patrick, I'm not going to start wearing a hoodie. Cool. I'm never suggesting that. Like what I'm saying is like, you do you, but you got to figure out what that means and what are the costs and benefits associated with making the different decisions. I didn't really do that the first part of my career. I was just on default setting. I just went. And the second I stopped and started kind of figuring these things out, you go, okay, now I'm gonna try some different ways of being or practicing or different boundaries. And it's not always going to work in the way that you expect or what works for one person, how they design their day or their life or their practice. So like might not work for you. So one of my buddies here, his name's Inti Martinez. He likes telling this story when he does like a wellness CLE presentation about how I posted an article about doing a 4-day work week. I did it for the bar. So he tried it. And he's like, it was the worst thing because he's like, he tried to then pack everything into 4 days. And I was like, well, Inti, you didn't read then the whole article because it was about a mindset, not actually doing the 4-day work week itself. It's about what works for you. So some people, it's like my paralegal, she used to work best at 10 p.m. at night. Cool. Great. We shouldn't have this expectation that then everyone works at 10 p.m. at night or everyone does X, Because
you said that, I will tell you this. I mentioned to you that I'm like everybody else right now, building my own practice management platform. And of course, it has a peak performance well-being angle to it. One of the features or sets of features is around all this kind of customization so that when you do have a team, whether it's just you and a paralegal or, you're a much bigger firm, everyone can set just for transparency, for communication purposes, so that everyone's on the same page. Like, when are your best working hours? When are your quiet hours? When can you like really not be engaged with except for an absolute emergency? What's an emergency? And reminders to take breaks, reminders to just like understanding how to think about, is this a priority? Is this actually important? How are we, just all of the questions that we're not taught how to think about, but that are just so essential to actually at least attempting to build a comfortable law practice and doing it in a way that is good for you and allowing everyone to do it in a different way, because by the way, we are all different and we need different things.
Well,
There's no one perfect system.
no, the system is the identification that everyone does it differently, and finding where there's overlap, and we're finding where there's absolute divergence. And this happens in other professions with like logistics, right? There's this idea that in the law you never really have to do any planning or be that intentional because your expectation is always. And so, right, like this
Always
stand
now.
and so this just makes it where if everything's an emergency, nothing is. It's kind of like the boy who cried wolf. And you know, if you're always saying like this is urgent, this is urgent, this is urgent, this is urgent, well then at a certain point nothing is. And so then when their true emergency comes in, it's hard to plan for. And so for me, I think the future of legal practice is really going to be about this alignment, this value-based alignment, and helping lawyers do the work and figure out like, is this working for me now? Is this going to work for me in the short term? In long term, I think we do too much long term planning. Like there's no, you don't know. And it's actually a waste of energy. And a lot of times that's displaced as opposed to dealing with immediate things that need to get resolved and talked about now. And we need happy lawyers. We need people who love lawyering. I mean, we need people who are going to do the hard work, because it is hard work to be out there fighting good fights and upholding kind of our systems and doing good work and being vocal advocates of why laws are important and why lawyers are important and why judges are important and, you know, the system. But we also need a culture reset. Otherwise, with the acceleration of data and information and speed, we're just going to end up burning out a lot of really good lawyers who love lawyering, because either they're in the wrong environment or the culture of practicing law hasn't shifted to a modern way of living, right? And addressing the fact that like we need really good female lawyers who are moms practicing law. Like we need people who aren't sacrificing and saying like it's an either or but a both and. Well, that's going to require us rethinking, much like you are. I think from a design standpoint, like what does a day look like? What does a week look like? What does a month look like? How do you get work done? What kind of work do you need to do? Do you need to do all of it, some of it, a particular kind? Can you say no? Is like, is that going to become a superpower? Is just and accepted. I think this is the thing is like thinking about changing systems, you need stakeholder buy-in, and change of a culture. Is there going to require more than just a couple people out here saying, "Hey, we need to change things"? So that
Well,
you know,
I think we have stakeholder buy-in, and the reason that I mean, you and I are building communities in such similar and overlapping ways because we're both very focused on lawyer well-being and that we need each other.
oh yeah,
The people part,
yeah,
the relationship.
that's right.
And
Mm-hmm.
and so the way I'm thinking about, at least with the Wellness Esquire and then more broadly, is I I know that there are so many lawyers who are really good at what they do, who really enjoy what they do, but they really don't like how they do it and it is not working for them. And they're looking for ways out. And then there are the ones who have figured out a way out or are figuring it out. But so many of these stories of people who are figuring it out or are ready for a change, they're quiet. It's you know it's not a dominant part of the industry because it's still relatively new. And so one of my goals with the Wellness Esquire is to just be like, hey guys, there's actually like a ton of us out here. And I believe we're actually the dominant force. We've just been quiet. But if we can just get loud and say, we're just going to grab onto each other and have a big like friend circle.
A human life raft will be like those ants that hold on to each other.
One person sees, it's not just me. I'm not alone. Oh, there's one more person. I mean, someone just said to me, I had no idea that there was this group of secretly happy lawyers out there. And now I'm one of them. And like that came through, as it often does with me. It's just like one kind lawyer at a time, making one introduction at a time. And it's a slow process.
It's incremental.
It's incremental. So we've gotta, boost it. But when we get that big community sense, it will take over. I don't think it's going to change the entire industry. I think we're still going to have dinosaurs who are fighting that you can only be smart if you're wearing a tie. And,
there's one way.
There'll always be the ones that we don't want to engage with. But I really feel very confident that we can get it to where we want for so many more people, and that the culture can end up feeling very, very different. Not tomorrow.
It's a iterative glacial process. But no, I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful. I think too, the younger lawyers that I've interacted with have done a lot more like introspective self-work. They know what they value much more than I think people did before when they were 23, 24. So, right, I think part of it's just going to be like labor dynamics, is that the industry is going to have to change because the people working are changing and are demanding a different environment, a different how, like you said. So no, I'm hopeful. I really think the practice law is varied and nuanced, invites more diversification than people I think historically have even acknowledged. And so that's why I advocate. It's like, I think early on, law students should be exposed to more ways that people practice law.
I agree. I think I'm constantly amazed in law and beyond law, just how many ways there are to make a living and to practice law. And I think if you have the brain for it, if it's a good fit for you, I think there are so many ways beyond what most people realize that being in law in some capacity can be the right fit. And I think a lot of people leave the industry sooner than they might otherwise need to, just because they don't know what the options are and they don't have the support system. Now, if you want to get out of the industry and that's what's best for you, go for it. I'm not trying to keep anybody in just who it's not good for. But I think as you said, there are so many possibilities that most people just don't even know about. And
don't knock it till you try it. Sometimes you have to go try and have the growth mindset of abundance in trying, and because you don't know, like you don't.
I think people get scared. A lot of the questions that I get, especially from law students, is, well, what if I start something and I hate it? And then I'm like, well, then you will try something else. And I get it, because I've gone through those phases of, I don't think I like what I'm doing. This isn't the right fit, but how do I get a job doing a thing I haven't done before because I can't prove that I know it? And I totally understand the fear. I also can tell you that most of the work that I'm doing now is not what I was doing when I first started. I think that's the case for I don't know if it's most, but certainly it's a very common story. And you can either just evolve slowly or you can do a whole big crazy pivot.
Sure, you can just jump.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah.
And a lot of it stems from the kind of work that I think you're now looking to do more of, which is really sitting with people, I think, tell me if I'm mistaken, one-on-one and in groups, and whether it's workshops or coaching or, standing in front of a room and, bigger room, talking about values and systems, and how do you understand what's right for you right now? What do you think is going to be right for you in maybe not 5 years, but maybe 6 months? And then how do you get there? And how do you really, what's the life that you want, as you said? And then how do you build the career around the life that you want? That's how we're going to get to having more happy lawyers.
Yeah, and being creative and clear and specific. So it can't just be like, I want to be happy. Well, what does happiness look like to you? It's like my kids and I will talk about this. I'm like, well, you need to be kind. And then I'll be like, what do you think kindness means? And then my
I think
kids
you should
have to.
have these conversations with colleagues, also with lawyers. Like,
Maybe I will. What does kindness look like to you?
what
Please tell me. What is kindness? What is that? How does that manifest itself for you?
But
Be-
I actually really mean that, because I think a lot of the misery that people end up experiencing is a lot of lawyers, they've lost track of kindness. There's so much stress, there's so much overwhelm. So people are not always treating each other well and not thinking about that, the impact of it, and how to change it.
yeah, I mean, kindness goes a long way, and we need to just accept that people have the capacity to change, and they're not always out to get you. I think there's this idea that like people are out to get you, or paranoid, or you have to send a CYA instead of just sometimes asking a question. Like maybe the client isn't responding to you because something bad just happened in their life. Like, and instead of just assuming the worst, how I frame it is usually I'll just reach out and be like, I'm just seeing, how are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, are you okay over there? As opposed to getting like angry or mad or creating your own narrative. I think the same goes for colleagues, is you can create your own narrative as opposed to sometimes just saying like, hey, you haven't been showing up at any bar events lately. Is everything okay? How are you doing? We need more of this, because this is what functioning healthy groups of people do who show up for each other.
Sure.
So
yes, and it's, when you said the kindness thing, and it was like, we should just start with that. I really mean it, because just in the last couple of weeks, I've seen quite a few posts from colleagues on LinkedIn about both recent and anniversaries of suicide. And the stories tend to be like, no one saw it coming, and it's the last person you would have expected, and we're not checking in on each other. We have this way of just saying like, hey, how are you? It's just like a fancy hello, but most people are not actually checking in to see like, but really,
how are you?
And by the way, if you're not okay, like, come talk to me. And one of my dreams actually with the Wellness Esquire is to end up in a place where if someone has, the Wellness Esquire mug on their desk, whether it's through Zoom or in person, and someone walks by their office or sees it, through the screen, they can say to themselves, oh, I think that might be a safe person that I can talk to about whether it's my mental health or this, ethical dilemma that I'm facing, or I don't know how to set a boundary, or whatever it is, because people aren't okay, and we're not checking on each other, and we're not figuring out how to take care of ourselves or those around us, and then we're shocked when we end up discovering that someone was really not okay.
Yeah, it's providing the resources. So like here in Minnesota, we have Lawyers Concerned for Lawyers. A lot of states have these services available to lawyers or other legal professionals. That's free and confidential, and there's no shame in it. As a profession, we're predisposed to anxiety, depression, ADHD, and right, it just attracts people that are already innately that way. Right. And then kind of compounds it by the pressures. And anyone who's done this work knows that one of the most powerful things you can do is just share and hear that someone else went through it too, and know that it's okay. It's okay to struggle, right? Like it's okay to sometimes just be like, I'm not doing okay. It's what you and I talked about before we hit record is like, it's not linear. It ebbs and flows, and there's good days and bad days. Hopefully, you have more good days than bad days. But life is that way. It's not binary. It's not black and white. It's all part of the experience. And so I think, for me at least, it's just been acknowledging that you got to feel all the feels. And one of the things that drives is deeper connection with clients, because then when they need to feel the feels, you go there and you can empathize, and it's real, right? Like when people are having their worst day, you're like, I see you. I know, because I have bad days. I can't even tell you how many clients I'm like, just would be like, I've been where you're at, life's hard. Life's expensive. Life doesn't go as planned. And it's not just lip service. It's the truth.
I think that ends up also, for those of us who end up really developing relationships with clients in that way, which I also do. And I think it's key to also like providing to maybe not for all practice areas. I think probably, certainly with the work that I do, I'm a better lawyer for my clients when I really know them as people. And what that can, part of that is just like, because then we're really knowing each other as people. There's a lot that goes with that. But some of that is like the client doesn't necessarily know what I need to know, what's important, what kind of updates are important. And so when they're just comfortable, like shooting the breeze with me and chatting about whatever, and then, blah, blah, blah. And then they say something and I'm like, wait a second.
Stop, pause.
Yeah. But part of the challenge also with developing those closer relationships, which can be so valuable to that attorney-client relationship, is then there are times where you kind of become the client's therapist.
Oh, yeah.
And
yes,
you're already struggling with your own stuff, and which maybe your personal stuff, and then the workload itself without sort of the emotion attached to it, if you can detach it. And then you become
counselor.
Therapist. Yeah. And
I've had to tell people I can't help you with that problem. I care because I'm a caring human, and that's difficult, but that's not a problem I can solve. And that's sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do for someone is say, I can't help you.
I care.
I care, but I can't help you. And that's the most caring thing. I'm not going to lie to you. And I can tell you what you want to hear. And some people take that. Most people take that very well, actually. And so, I mean, there's that too, is like, right, with boundaries, people would be like, and this is how I'm going to wrap it up. You and I could talk all day, but my computer's about to die because I didn't plug it in. But a practical thing is, right, like I helped people typically in the worst situation of their life. And that would be compounded sometimes. Like I had cases where then like a spouse passed away while I was helping them, or their mother died, or they got cancer, or, ran the gambit, right? I had one during COVID where my client, his college-age daughter died of COVID right when they were about to lose their family farm, right? This is heavy stuff, right? And processing people's trauma and their grief and holding it, and having sometimes be like, and the court does not care. Like the system does not care about your emotions or your feelings, but I do. And I'm going to hold space for that. I'm going to create systems actually and automate things so I have the capacity built in for your humanity in the situation. Is, I think, I'm hopeful that with innovation and everything we're seeing in the legal profession, with AI and technology just in general, automation in general, really frees up lawyers to be kind of that counselor from a legal perspective or community member, right? Where it's not just all about more clients, more billables, more revenue. And instead of saying, we have enough. Now what are we going to do with this extra capacity? That's what I really am hoping the conversation and where the profession goes, as opposed to just, well, now that I can do that thing that used to take an hour and 10 minutes, now I'm going to do 6 of them. So I actually don't have more time or more capacity. If anything, now I went from having one client doing 1 hour work to now I have 6 clients doing an hour of work. Well, now you have 6 human beings on the other side. That actually is going to require more of you. And I just don't think we're talking about this enough to say when is enough. So to kind of bring the theme full circle is just like satisfaction and enough, and finding that for yourself, for your firm, for your family, for your friends, for whatever community you find yourself in, I think is really what we're up against, is just saying like, well, that's enough. I'm satisfied. I don't need to grasp or search or long for anything more than what I currently have.
Thank you, Patrick.
You are very welcome. Thank you for having me.
This was fun.
Let's
keep in touch.
Yeah. I'm sorry it took 2 hours instead of
okay. We had fun.
So.
I had the time because I'm perfectly. I'm in Mykonos, so it's nighttime. I think I'm gonna go have some chocolate cake.
That sounds awesome.
The restaurant closes, I think, in 20 minutes.
We'll have fun in Mykonos.
I think that's
please go get yourself some chocolate cake. I don't want to stand between you and chocolate cake. Never want to be that person. So I'll talk to you later. Peace.
I appreciate that you know that. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed. Please be sure to check out the links in the show notes and to rate and subscribe the podcast. I hope you have a wonderful day, and please remember to be kind to yourself.